This Week in Startups is brought to you by Design Crowd. Best custom graphic, logo, and web designs for your business. Get $100 off your design project at designcrowd.com/twist or enter promo code TWIST. And Braintree. You've outgrown your local markets. Now you're setting your sights global. To learn more about how Braintree can help you expand internationally, visit braintreepayments.com/twist.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and this is another episode of This Week in Startups, which is a twice-a-week program that I've been doing for over 6 years now, over 600 episodes, and it really is the highlight of my week. Every week I get to sit down with 2 or 3 different entrepreneurs, founders, investors, and today we have Adeo Ressi with us again. He's been on the program before, and he runs the amazing Founders Institute, which has many, many chapters where entrepreneurs get to learn the art of the startup, and he has perhaps one of the widest views, the widest aperture of the global startup market of anybody, because he's been running chapters around the world and seen all kinds of interesting startups and trends from countries that you wouldn't expect to have startup environments. He's also an entrepreneur in his own right. I met him in the 90s in Silicon Alley when he was doing Method 5, a web design firm. And back in the day, if you really wanted to be involved in the internet, you started a company that made websites, because literally back then people didn't even have those. Now they just use Squarespace and they put up a gorgeous website for $15 a month or $5 a month. So it's really a pleasure to have Adeo Ressi back on the program. Welcome, Adeo.
Thank you, Jason. I feel like it's been forever. 600 episodes.
600 episodes, a little bit crazy.
That's insane.
It's nuts. And now a lot more people watching the program. For people who don't know, what is the Founders Institute and why did you start it?
So we take people at the very beginning of their entrepreneurial journey. We put them through a 3.5-month-long program. It has sessions once a week at night, and we output a strong entrepreneur with a good company. We do that in about 135 cities around the world, so we produce like approximately 2,000 companies a year right now. But we've been doubling every year, and doubling off the base. So if we have 2,000 companies in our portfolio right now, we'll produce 2,000 more. In 1 year's time, when we have 4,000, we should produce 4,000 a year. So it's been an insane roller coaster ride, so to speak. And learned a lot, even though I thought I knew a lot about entrepreneurship. And in terms of why I started it, it's hard, right, to be an entrepreneur. And my vision was, hey, maybe if I can set something up that made it easier for people, it would be a win all around.
And the program is not a classic incubator. It's more like a school, is how I tend to explain it to people. Even though startups come out of it, people pay to go to school. There's a small fee associated with it, a couple $100 or $1,000.
Yeah, it depends on the location. We're in Afghanistan, where it's, I think, $175, and then we're in Silicon Valley where it's $2,000. So there's a big spread.
And so people who are coming, it's not like Y Combinator where they're coming in and they've got an MVP or maybe 6 months of traction, or the LAUNCH Incubator where maybe the companies have $10,000 a month in recurring revenue. These are people who are still working in some cases at their day jobs and coming to the Founders Institute at night, learning how to be an entrepreneur and trying to come up with an idea, correct?
Yeah, so I'd say 70% to 90% of the inbound people have a job. Right. So for them, they're passionate about something and they're smart. So they say, maybe I could do this right, and maybe I can do it wrong. And if I get some help, the likelihood of doing it right increases. So they look to a program like what we provide for that help to increase the odds of success. Now, a lot of people realize that it's the wrong thing for them. I mean, entrepreneurship is a slog. Right. And so about 65% of the people that enroll drop out. Some of them come back. It's free to come back, right? So we want you to come back, in fact. But some just realize, oh my God, way too hard. I thought this was going to be fun. Yeah. It's not.
So that's actually, in a way, a great thing, because if you are thinking you want to be an entrepreneur and you think it's going to be, like watching Silicon Valley, the TV show, or which, I haven't watched this current season, so no spoilers, but, it's not easy. And a lot of people maybe underestimate exactly how painful it is. And I think your program tries to be that, bucket of cold water to say, hey, realize if you do this, here are, because you have 2 speakers a week typically, I think.
3.
3 now. And so after 12 weeks, 14 weeks in the program?
14 sessions, 12 to 13 weeks, depending on holidays.
You're going to meet 40 entrepreneurs or something, and investors along the way. We're going to speak, and that should give you a pretty good idea about what this is about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that. Plus, we try to simulate the stress and pressure of being an entrepreneur. So we put you in a working group, and we have a president, and the working group is like an early startup. Everyone else in the working groups, usually about 5 people, are type A, walk through wall kind of people, and you've got to lead them as the president, and which is almost impossible. And then, meanwhile, you have incredible stress and pressure placed on you from the weekly grind of work. And then we do things like special assignments where we actually ask you to do a Herculean amount of work in a short period of time when you fall behind, but also sometimes just to train you. And I mean, that's what life is like. There are days where I work 20 hours easily. I mean, in this period of time, I'm working 100, 115 hours a week. So, you got to be ready for whatever the world throws at you as an entrepreneur. And we try and prepare you by simulating that in the program.
And that's why you get a lot of people who quit. And then you do get some people who actually start companies while they're there. And a lot of them go on to other programs.
Definitely.
So what are some of the companies that have gone on that we might know to either raise venture or go to another program?
Well, so some of the big ones, here in America, there's a company called Udemy. It's probably the number one e-learn. It's up there. There are 2 or 3 that
That's a $1 billion market cap company.
Definitely, yeah. There's another one right behind it from Los Angeles called Realty Mogul. It's also the number one. Usually we have a lot of number one, so it's the number one crowdsourced realty investment platform in America and hopefully soon to be in the world. Then when you move over to Asia, we have a company called iCars Club, which is kind of like a relay rides meets Uber. That's worth over $1 billion in China. And so depending on the market, we can point out top companies in each country, region, or city that we've been responsible, like the number one startup in Colombia. It's graduate, the country of Colombia is graduate.
And then what's your deal? I see Reality Mogul here. Yeah, they do group. It's sort of like Angel List for
real estate. Yeah,
real estate. So a group of people can get together and buy buildings or something.
Correct. So if you wanted, one of my friends wants to start an innovative co-working space. So he's like, well, maybe I can buy the building, crowdfund the purchase, and you might use Realty Mogul as a platform.
Yeah. And so what's the deal with your incubator? You're not putting money in. They pay you to come, a small fee, which seems, because I get questions from people, because I always tell people, like, hey, don't pay to go speak at an angel group. And sometimes they say, oh, what about Founders Institute? You pay for that. And I say, well, is it an education? And you're comparing it more to like going to a learning annex or a college class. So what does it cost compared to a Stanford class? And it seems like it's de minimis compared to that.
Free.
Yeah, it's essentially free compared to that. But it's a small amount of money. But you also take a little piece of the companies that are formed during.
Correct. And we give 85% of the value back to the local network. And that's been panning out pretty good. We've had a few 7-figure exits, quite a few 6-figure exits. Whenever we get a check, we ginsu it up into smaller pieces and send it out.
And I got a check, I think, for $20,000 or $15,000.
I think it was 20, but yeah.
Yeah, $20,000, which I was like, I handed it to my wife. I was like, I spoke at the Founders Institute 5 or 6 years ago, and I guess you sold equity in one of the companies. I wouldn't say which one, because I don't think that part's public, but I guess you sold some shares in a company in the secondary market, and I was the number 2 speaker that year. And so the number 1 speaker got $30K.
50.
50. The number 2 got 20. I just said to myself, my God, how am I the number 2 speaker? I'm always number 1. So one time I must have been sick or something, but I think Aaron from Mint was number 1.
It was Scott Painter.
Scott Painter was number 1. I was number 2. And Scott Painter from Cars.com. So actually, just for coming one session as a mentor, I got $20,000, which is, by the way, the second largest speaking gig I've ever had in my life. I think I one time had a $25,000.
I think it was 28,000 to be a little more precise.
That it was the number one speaking gig I've ever had, and I was like, wow, this model actually works to a certain extent. But
yeah, we have a bunch more coming too.
Yeah,
which is great. And so the idea is that you as a mentor get a check, but actually the nice thing is founders who go through the program also got a check. So if you went, that was our largest cohort, and if you went through that class, so normally cohorts are like 15 people, 8 people, maybe 20. This had like 30 something. And they got, I think it was a $12,000 or $15,000 check just for going through the program.
Each one?
Yeah, and there's more exits coming out of that.
Because you pool the equity together. So
yeah.
You get 3 points of every company? 4?
3.5.
3.5.
And we're increasing it to 4 to increase the payday back to the network. And it works, I mean, you go through a program. If you went through that cohort, even though you had 37 peers, so it diluted the overall the total share, right? I'm expecting you're going to make maybe 150,000 just from going to the class, so to speak.
So in a way, it's like a gamble. If somebody in the class breaks out and that 4% becomes worth $40 million, what percentage, how does that 3.5%, 4% roughly break up? A point to the mentors, a point to the
15% of it goes to us as you can call it a management fee, if you will. 25% of it goes to the person who runs the program in the city.
Okay, whoever the leader is.
Yeah, the leader.
You were the leader of that city. That time was the first one.
Very nice.
I
was very happy with that. And then 30% goes to mentors based on their rating, and 30% goes to founders based on just graduating.
Got it.
Right? So, and graduating's tough.
When you first told me that idea, I just thought, my God, that's going to be like impossible to implement and insane.
It's a little challenging.
It's insane and it's impossible to implement, but if you hit just one, if you hit one Airbnb, I mean, that would be, at this point, 30 times what the company, if it was $1 billion company, that would be 30 times that. I mean, it could be a $400 million position, and then you'd be looking at sending out.
Well, we're starting to see that. I mean, the Chinese company I referenced is definitely in the mid-single figure billions.
Yeah.
So hopefully they can.
And now, when we come back, I want to know how you select who gets to come to the Founders Institute, and how you select the mentors. I'm sorry, what do you call the person who runs the program?
The directors.
Yeah, so those are the two things. If somebody wanted to start one in their country, I want to know how you select a director. And if people apply, because I know you get more applications than slots, how you pick who gets to go to each Founders Institute when we get back on This Week in Startups. Hey, everybody, we've got a great new partner on This Week in Startups, and I'm really excited about it because it's a product that we're using here at This Week in Startups and Launch, and it's called Design Crowd. You can go ahead and check it out at designcrowd.com and on Twitter at DesignCrowd. What is it? It is the best way to make a logo, a graphics, or web design for your business. It's an online marketplace where you can outsource or crowdsource, as you know, custom designs, and they have over 500,000 designers there around the world. Here's how it works. Very simple. You post a brief. What is a brief? It's basically like your spec. I'm looking for a logo for This Week in Startups. It's a podcast with a bombastic, aggressive, Brooklyn-born bulldog of a host, Jason Calacanis, but it's about technology and finance. And then you get feedback from 50 to 100 designers, sometimes even more. And then you give them feedback. So you look at the 50 or 100 designers' work and you say, you know what? These 3 speak to me. I like the bulldog logo. We used to have a bulldog logo in This Week in Startups. Yeah, let's play off the bulldog. And then I like this other person who's doing the skyline of New York and the skyline of San Francisco. Oh, that tells the story of Jason going from New York to San Francisco. Great. You give them that feedback. It motivates the designers. They give you more. And then you select the best one and you approve payment to that designer. It's a money-back guarantee. There are designers all over the world who love working on this type of platform, and their clients include the Harvard Business School, Forum for Innovation and Growth, Virgin, HTC, Absolute Vodka, Amnesty International, which was my first job out of school. I worked at Amnesty International as a microcomputer specialist, and 100,000 plus small businesses and entrepreneurs. Visit designcrowd.com/twist, and they will give you up to $100 on your next design project. Go ahead and visit designcrowd.com/twist and save up to $100 on your design project. And for the super fans, special mission. Go ahead and thank @DesignCrowd on Twitter and Facebook, and I will like it and retweet it from our different accounts. Great way to engage and reward the partners who make independent media like This Week in Startups possible. Thanks again to our new partner, DesignCrowd. Go ahead and try it. It's really good. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. You can follow me on Twitter @Jason. My guest today, Adeo Ressi, who is @Adeo, ADEO, Ressi, RESSI on Twitter. And you can follow @Founding, FOUNDING, or visit fi.co on the interwebs. Adeo Ressi is, of course, the founder of the Founder Institute, and previously he had done the secret Glassdoor covert reviews of VCs back in the day, the funded.com, which everybody assumed was me. And I got a million questions. But that site was, you did that for a couple of years before you did the Founders Institute. And that was quite controversial. Explain to people what the funded.com was and why you created it.
Well, it's still there, and it's doing better and better as we're going through a tough time for entrepreneurship in the world right now. So what the Funded does, it lists most of the venture capitalists in the world and provides a forum for entrepreneurs to rate the firm, to rate the partners, and to provide honest, totally anonymous, and actually obscured feedback on their experiences with the firm. And what ended up happening is it corrected bad behavior almost overnight in the venture community.
People canceling meetings, people reneging on term sheets, this kind of behavior.
Well, and really awful economic terms like 5X, participating preferred, just like
weird stuff.
Yeah, really, all that was eliminated within about 3 years of the site coming out. So it came out in like 2007-ish, and by 2010, most of the bad behavior.
The market also corrected that to a certain extent. As the market goes up, people can't get those terms, and entrepreneurs do talk to each other now. Unlike when we started, where people just didn't share information.
No, and so there's a lot of things. I mean, but I think it was sort of like a sign of the times, also a catalyst. But, it's starting again, so.
Are you seeing bad behavior or like onerous terms?
Both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going to catch a knife, let's talk about this for a minute for people who don't have a full background in investing. Explain to people what a 5X participating preferred means for an entrepreneur when they get a term sheet to put $1 million into their $10 million company, and then it sells for $20 million.
So this is the most misunderstood concept among entrepreneurs in the world, and I've spent a lot of my life trying to fix it in every way. But in the simplest way to explain the problem that is faced by entrepreneurs today. If you own 10% of the company and you sell for $100 million, how much do you get?
Yeah.
Now, some people will just say, $10 million. And that's not true. Some smarter people who have a little bit more experience might say, well, there might be some complicated terms, so it's not 10 million, but you can figure it out. The truth of the matter is you can't figure it out. It's 100% negotiated.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the agreements say. They've become so complicated and so divorced from reality, even in these simplified formats, that if you own 10% of the company and you sell for $100 million, not even the best lawyers on the planet can tell you how much money you'll get. And in fact, that's why it always boils down to this like 11th hour negotiation, which is grueling.
Yeah. But with a multiple liquidation preference, people can say, I want to get out this at least this amount.
When you have these 6X liquidating participating lick prefs, as they're called, you get nothing. Basically, I can assure you that if you sell for anything less than maybe $250 million, you as an entrepreneur will get nothing.
Right. So let's go back to the question about the Founders Institute and how people get selected to be part of it and how people get picked to run their program. So you have an interface here we can pull up on the screen. For those of you listening to the podcast, I will sportscast it along with Adeo. I see here on the left, Bangalore, Boise, Idaho, Brussels, Casablanca.
Some of these places. So what
Cleveland,
happens is
Delhi.
a lot of interesting places write in and say they want to open a chapter. And then what we do is we start analyzing them and trying to figure out if they make a good director through a variety of means. So we essentially score them, right? And say, okay, you are in Lagos or wherever you're applying from, and we do an analysis of your background, your entrepreneurial experience, your how well you know the local ecosystem, and we come up with a score on a 1 to 10 basis. Then when the founders go through the program, they rate the directors on a 1 to 10 basis. And we've gotten it now where basically almost 90% of the time, our predictive score is lower or exactly accurate to how they do in the real world. Now, the problem is the 10% when we're off, right? Because that's a disaster, right? One bad program can ruin a city for years.
Right, and it's happened.
We're big. It happens more than we'd like. So then what we're notorious about, which I can show you some of as well, we study like social science at the firm. It's in our DNA. And we've figured out how to predict the likelihood of a director to fail outside of our prediction. So not only do we have a prediction that 90% of the time is right, but then we can find out those outlier cases and screen against them as well.
Which is personality tests that you do.
We have a personality test that we use. It takes about an hour to complete, and we use it for all directors and all people that come in the program, and it helps us screen.
It's like a Myers-Briggs, or
if a lot of social scientists look at it and they have no idea what it is. So basically, and there's some history to why that is, but it's based on the Big Five personality. We've done some intelligence and fluid intelligence testing on top of that, and then we've done some trouble marker testing. And then what's happened is
trouble marker testing. What does that mean? The person is a maverick in a bad way, or a bad apple, or a sociopath? What does it mean?
So, okay, we're opening up a little bit of a Pandora's box.
Sure, let's do it.
There are things that we call flags, and there's like a large number of them.
Ethics.
No, they're like narcissism, predatory aggression, deceit. Permanent
you have somebody
sadness.
with this? Can I invest in their company? If you have, can I get that list? Those are the people I want to invest in.
Well, probably not. So
No.
we have a list,
Explain.
call it of 20 to 25 different flags. And depending on the population, certain countries and certain cities have a much higher propensity of their population to have these flags. So, for example, in Amsterdam in the Netherlands is one of the highest rate of flag detection of the test that we see anywhere in the world.
In the Netherlands?
Yeah. And
wow. Because people there are transient, maybe, or
I don't know, but they
too much marijuana.
There's huge differences in the flag rate based on city and country.
Interesting. So what happened in a place like Afghanistan, where it's an emerging culture that has all kinds of wars and dislocated individuals and pain and suffering? Does it go off the chart in a positive or negative way?
Okay, well, that was a very interesting. You couldn't have asked about a better reference example. So, on average, Afghanistan has some of the lowest, the lowest predict scores in the world. So, they vary, and predict is our ability to predict. Remember how I said I can predict how well a director does in 90% of the time? I can do the same thing with a founder, and it's about 84% of the time. The average predict rate, and we measure this on a 1 to 5 level versus directors 1 to 10. The average predict rate of an Afghan entrepreneur is somewhere in the 1.3 to 1.5 range, whereas the global average is probably like a 2.3.
In other words, the higher the number, the better chance of success?
Well, yes, and it's complicated. That's not exactly true. It's like measuring height. So the higher the number, the taller you are, and the more likely you are to be a good basketball player. But if you don't work at it, if you don't care, and if you don't try, it doesn't matter how tall you are. I'm really tall and I suck.
Right. So you're pretty awkward when it comes to physical moving around. I know. So that's interesting. So you can actually, but I wonder if there is a signaling that people who are coming to the program, so putting aside that different places have rougher histories.
Yeah.
But on the people who want to be the leaders and the directors, that's an interesting group of people, because to want to direct a program means you have a certain level of narcissism or a certain level of altruism. It could go either way. You feel like you want to help people, or you feel like you're self-important and you want to help people. So talk about and unpack narcissism in directors and entrepreneurs. Is narcissism good or bad?
So flags as a director don't really matter. We have flag directors that are great. We have flag directors that are bad. No difference. However,
in their eventual ratings from the entrepreneurs
and how they perform. And however, we did back when we had 1,300 grads. We said, okay, let's take the very, very best. So we went to the top 300. And these are ones that raised lots of money and you'd know by name, blah, blah, blah. And we looked. How many of them had any flags? And keep in mind that across the entire graduate pool at the time, we had 20% of the grads had flags. In the top 300, there were literally none. Not one founder had not one flag. So 0-0.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the top graduates don't have flags.
Any flags.
Any flags. 0.
Yeah, 0.
Okay.
That's insane. I mean, there's another interesting thing we discovered too. I can predict so far 100%, eventually it might not be 100% anymore, if a co-founding team will break up. The easiest possible predictor, if one of the two founders has a flag and the other one does not, 100% of the time they break up.
Interesting. So one of them is grounded, balanced, takes the work seriously. One of them has some wild card, and it just means the other one is not going to deal with that nonsense, or the other one winds up blowing it up and taking the other one for advantage. Can you read into it?
Sure. I mean,
anecdotal?
I don't, it's anecdotal. I'm not, first of all, I'm like a closet social scientist, but I'm not I feel like I study it every day, actually. So my thesis is the following. The flagged people generally form codependent relationships to survive in the world today, right? Because they have some sort of issue, whatever it is. It's clearly they're fine. They eat, they live, but
they have a personality issue.
Yes, maybe. There are different severities as well, but they have some sort of issue. So they form codependent relationships, and oftentimes that codependency can become co-founders, but co-founder relationships are not codependent, right? It's like two generals trying to bring their army to the victory.
One can sleep, one can actually work. The other one can work.
It's not like one kind of weak general being dragged along by a strong general. Now, so the codependency is a problem. The other issue is generally everyone is flagged to some extent, right? Like, you may be a very have a certain level of agreeableness that's low, but you might have an extroversion that's really high, for example. So you can be triggered, but your threshold is really high. So with a lot of flags, it's that your threshold of getting triggered is low. So like you won't fly off the handle. So if I'm like, and poking you and trying to aggravate you, you don't easily get upset. You don't fly off the handle. You don't yell at me. When someone's flagged, their thresholds are lower.
Got it.
So they can be knocked off. And so you'll see one of the other things we've seen is like drug abuse by flag founders.
Alcoholism.
You've heard the stories, right?
Yeah.
The stress, they start
Well,
drinking.
we've seen suicides even.
Yeah.
There's a group of people, sadly, and you know what? We've had two people on the program, Jody from EcoMom and Austin Hines from Cambrian, and they both committed suicide. We don't know exactly what the details are, but I can tell you in both of those individuals, having spent time with each one, there was a certain mania to each one of them where they were manically passionate about what they did. And it feels in hindsight, and again, I don't want to psychoanalyze anybody without being a psychoanalyst, it does seem to me that sometimes I see people who have an enthusiasm level that reaches mania that is correlated with them disappearing or maybe hitting lower lows in addition to those higher highs. And really, entrepreneurship has enough inherent highs and lows that you don't need to add to it your own inherent, throttling and or, hitting the accelerator on those emotions.
That's why we take the testing so seriously, because some people are better equipped to handle it than others.
Okay, when we get back, I want to talk about what those qualities are. What are the flags in terms of personality traits for people who can handle it and succeed? And then if you have any thoughts on how people can improve on those issues, because people are dynamic, they're not static, and they could actually become better at things. And also I want to talk a little bit about Expansive Ventures, your venture firm, which seems to have gone away, when we get back on This Week in Startups. Hey everybody, let me take a moment to tell you all about Braintree, which many of my startups are using. You're going to outgrow your local market at some point, and you're going to want to set your sights on the global market. And here are 3 very important tips for you to scale your business around the world. Number 1, you want to create a great customer experience. And that means you want to design something that's intuitive and well-designed for local individuals, and that's going to pay dividends once you expand globally. And 2, you want to accept local currencies, obviously, because it's a simple way to increase conversion rates when people are checking out. If you accept their local currency, the chances of them buying from you is going to greatly increase. And once your biz is ready, you want to set up a domicile, and that's going to offer, once you get your bank account and an office in countries, great business and tax advantages. It can also lower your interchange rates and let you deposit transactions into the local currency. Braintree is a payment platform that allows you to easily accept currency in over 130 countries, 130 currencies, in fact. Also, it's a seamless checkout that helps every customer experience be painless. To learn more, go visit braintreepayments.com/twist, braintreepayments.com/twist. A ton of my startups use it, and it's absolutely magical. You can accept Bitcoin, you can accept Apple Pay, you can accept everything. And it just works, and it's very easy. Just a little snippet of code, you put it in, and you're off to the races. And of course, majority of my startups eventually wind up making more money outside the U.S. than they do inside the U.S. because there's many more countries and many more people living outside the U.S. than inside the U.S. So when you're ready to scale and you've outgrown your local market, you want to use Braintree. Go ahead and follow @Braintree and thank them on Twitter @Braintree. And to learn more, visit braintreepayments.com/twist, braintreepayments.com/twist. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. We do this program twice a week. Go to thisweekinstartups.com and you will see over 600 episodes. You can also find us in obvious places like Twitter @TWI Startups and Instagram @TWI Startups. And you can type in This Week in Startups on YouTube. You'll find us. We're there. And of course, in iTunes. And one thing I'll ask you, if you have a moment and you enjoy the show and you get value from it, do us a huge favor and let us know by writing a wonderful 5-star review in iTunes. I see every one of them. They email me them as they come in. And I just love to see people give us positive feedback. And if you don't like the show and there are problems, you can just email Jackie @launch.co and tell Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie what to fix. So if you're going to do under 4 stars, you email Jackie. Over 4 stars, I'm shaping our reviews. No, it's just great to read the reviews. It's like we have so many reviews now. And it's like the bad reviews are all from 2009 or whatever, 2011, where it's like, Jason doesn't let the guest talk. I'm like, yeah, that's a fair critique. That was a fair critique early on. All right, listen, my guest today, Adeo Ressi, who runs the Founders Institute in over 100 cities on 6 continents with 2,000 companies worldwide in 2016. You can go to fi.co/companies to see them. And one question we need to get out of the way is, how do you pick founders, and what can they put in their application that would increase their ability to be accepted?
So we do.
Or does everybody get accepted?
No.
On the
I mean, I would say our global acceptance rate is somewhere between 10 and 30%, depending. And what it depends on is really the quality of the applicants, not so much. And we have a threshold based on the predictive score that comes out of the test, right? So there's a minimum threshold worldwide. And then you provide 2 written answers. So really we factor 3 things in. The test, right? That's big. That's about half. Your written answers and your background in bio is the other half.
Got it. What's interesting about that is if you look at a program like Launch Incubator or Y Combinator, acceptance rate 1%, other incubators might be 5%. It's actually a very realistic thing to work on your career and get accepted to the Founders Institute and then form a company, maybe raise $25K or just get the prototype done and then apply to those other places. You see a lot of that, don't you?
Yeah, I would say that right now that's increasing. So in the past, it was about 7% of our grads went into Launch Incubator or similar type programs.
RushTix was one.
Yeah. Now
Jill
it's
from RushTix.
increasing. I would expect to see more like 15%. There's a couple of reasons for that. There's more programs out there that are good.
Yep.
And you know, we're very early. Like there once was a time where a program like Launch and the Founder Institute maybe even overlapped or touched side by side, but you've been moving later and later, and we haven't really changed where we are.
Right. So there's a gap. We're actually starting to get 500 startup companies go from 500 to Launch Incubator because we've sort of, by only doing 7 and they do, I guess, whatever. 40
right.
per, that's here, and then they have other locations around the world. So I don't know how many they're graduating per year, but hundreds.
Yeah.
And we're only going to graduate dozens. So it is kind of like a funnel, I think. And we've had 3 of our companies go to Y Combinator. So there does seem to be a nice, well, they're mostly from the hackathon, though. So let's talk a little bit about Expansive Ventures. I know there was a big announcement that you raised a fund.
Yep.
And then the fund, I think, was disbanded, or there was some disagreement between you and John Soberg, who was your partner on it. What's the latest on that? Can you talk about it? I know there's been some rumors about you guys having a falling out.
Yeah. So, you know, look, no matter how successful you get as an entrepreneur, it's hard every time, right? And I took a hard lesson with Expansive Ventures, I gotta tell you, because I've been a huge pundit on venture capital for years, right? And, you know, I kind of came in like a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed venture investor, like, all right, we're going to have a big impact on the venture capital world. And I've been, you know, beaten up pretty hard in the process. You know, I learned hard lessons on the other side of the table, being an investor, been an entrepreneur all my life. And then, you know, I ran into problems with my partner because we didn't share the same vision about the future of the firm. And that happens, right? You know, 2 people start working together and they go in with the best of intentions, and then they realize that they don't share the same vision, and that's.
You didn't run a test on your partner, no personality test, or you didn't run one on you?
It could probably both ways. You know, the reality is that you just really never know until you start working with someone. What the situation will be. And, you know, I counsel entrepreneurs all the time to spend an inordinate amount of time testing and working with someone before jumping, you know, full bolt. And we did that, right? So we did a lot of the right things. But the other thing that people forget is that once the engine starts running, I mean, it's a roller coaster. There are days that are the best days ever, followed by days that are the darkest ever.
Yeah.
And you know, no matter how much you test a relationship, when you're in the pits of despair.
You know what it's like? It's like when you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend and you go to Hawaii on vacation. It's like, if you're not getting along in Hawaii or Paris and you're fighting, you're never going to get along. You're in one of the greatest, most romantic places in the world and you're fighting. Really? I know I had a girlfriend once and it was just like, she wasn't happy in Paris or Hawaii or whatever. I can't remember where
Well,
we
if
went on
she's not
vacation.
happy in Paris, she's especially not going to be happy when you're fighting in the kitchen of
Well,
your
exactly.
one-room
It's just
apartment.
like,
right?
yeah, like, I mean, if you can't handle this magical world of vacation, we're going to have a major problem. But it's also part of the reason why I have no partners and I'm a solo act. Like, I do think that investing with a partner means you have to really have a level of trust and, ability to disagree that is going to slow you down to a certain extent. And for angel investing, you can't go slow. You got to go fast.
Yeah, it's super hard. I mean, I got to tell you, so it's, and there's logical divisions of labor when you work in a fund, right? So some people go out and fundraise, some people can go do other things. So we sort of fell into that I was doing most of the external fundraising, and he was focusing on doing a lot of the deals, and that in a weird way that drove us apart rather than bringing us together,
right?
Because we weren't working on the same things day to day, and these are all things that in hindsight, I've started 8 companies, created $2 billion of shareholder value before the Founder Institute.
Yeah.
I should know these things. I do know them.
What would you do differently? I mean, if you could go back, you turn the clock back, what would you do differently? What have you learned through having a fund that, let's face it, either is going to be shut down or imploded or, didn't work out?
It didn't work out. It actually has good returns, so knock on wood.
Yeah. You made a couple of solid investments.
And we actually had an exit.
Yeah.
Then more to come, hopefully.
Yeah.
So, I think the partnership suffered more than the actual execution. But yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would say, and this holds true for every entrepreneur in the world today, it's like, no matter how good you think you are at whatever, I'm the best programmer, I'm the best entrepreneur, I'm the best
salesperson.
You're going to square zero, not even one. Right. Square zero. I mean,
starting over.
Scott Painter, a mutual friend of ours, we might say probably one of the best entrepreneurs of our time, right?
I would say he's definitely done well.
Top what?
Top 50. I mean, I would just Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs.
I would give him top 25.
Maybe I'd say top 30 to 50, something in there. And we did Cars.com. It was a big success. He did True.
Yeah.
That was
Public, which
went public. Yeah. That's huge.
It's one of the few companies that's gone public in the last 10 years.
Yeah,
so
no, I'm not, there's no diss there, but I mean, greatest of all time is like...
One, I said one of.
Okay, one of. Okay, I put him...
Not all time.
Scott, I say 37, which is, by the way, that's about 300 slots ahead of Adeo and myself, or maybe 3,000. So, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay.
You're being a little hyperbolic.
he got on stage in the event where you were and said, where you also keynoted right before him, and he said, you know what, I'm starting my new thing. I believe it's called Fair Financial. And I'm right where you are, and pointed to everyone in the audience. It's kind of weird for me standing up here holding a mic, but I'm right where you are. And at the time I was like, yeah. And that.
Yeah. You're starting over every time. It's a blank piece of paper.
Blank piece of paper. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter you're best programmer, best pundit, best
Got to climb the mountain all over again.
And you're not starting midway because you just did it before.
No.
You're starting at the bottom.
You may have some good equipment, you may have some experiences, but you still got to climb the mountain.
Yeah, and you're starting at zero.
Let me ask you about cities. What city in the world? So that's enough about expansive. We get it. What city in the world has outperformed and exceeded your expectations? What city did you have high hopes for as a chapter and were disappointed?
Well, so I would say Canada is killing it.
Really?
Oh my God. I mean, Canada makes me feel like I'm doing a bad job in Silicon Valley, and I have all the chips stacked with me.
Sure.
Right? Both Montreal and Canada, Montreal and Toronto. Montreal's probably number one, followed closely by Toronto. I mean, it's just like they're like a gold mine. It's like, it's like gold. And, it's not that I had low expectations about them, but I didn't think they would be number one by a wide margin to the rest of the world. And I've had cities that, surprised me in different ways. We had 100% female graduating class out of Kabul, Afghanistan. Now, they're women running the program, and they've designed the program to support women entrepreneurs, which is you have to do unusual things. Like you can't end after dark because it's not safe to walk on the street. So that surprised me in a lot of ways. 100% female graduation rate, et cetera. So those, but you know, it's not the same gold mine, let's say, as Canada. You know, I would say that the big negative surprise for me, which, you know, is in the news a lot lately, has been Europe.
It's a disaster.
In general, but, you know, not just their politics. I would say their startups. You know, you would think that they are culturally and economically very similar to the U.S. Right? They have democracies for the most part. Stable currency and you know, economies that function, rule of law, stuff like that. They can't seem to get the startup stuff right. I mean, and
why is that? Is it because of the socialist or, you know, socialist leaning regulations where you have to put years of salary and the founders are personally liable, and these regulations that make it harder to take risk? Is that the big issue? I hear that often.
So, yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, of course, you can't just point your finger at any one thing and be like, that's definitely it, because I'm sure it's a combination of things. So you have, let's start with some basics. I mean, they have like generally speaking, compared to America, they have a very different work ethic.
Sure. 6 weeks vacation versus 2 weeks.
If that. I don't take vacation. I mean, my vacation is like I went away for Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Big vacation. I mean, so, you know, you've got a baked-in mindset at every level all the way to the CEO of, you know, 35-hour work weeks, you know, multiple weeks of it. And this isn't everywhere, and I don't like generalizing, but I definitely think on average you have a very different work ethic, and that's one of the starting points. The regulatory stuff isn't great either. So you've got some countries, okay, to start the equivalent of an LLC in Brussels, you have to put money down, right? You have to put money in the bank. 18,000 euro.
Wow.
I think it's 18,060.
Just to start a limited liability corporation.
Yeah, you have to put it in the bank.
Whereas here in the United States, it's $300 or $400 in fees.
And you don't even have to put any money in. Of course, you may put 25 or whatever, but I mean
$25 to start a bank account, right?
Right. So 18,000 euros in the bank to start the equivalent of their cheapest corporates. I mean, and that's not uncommon. It's called a reserve requirement. Most European countries require that you have a reserve requirement to start a company. Now, what's crazy about that is, you know, there's this talk about the Brexit and it passed last week.
Yeah, for people who don't know, this was recorded. It's Monday after the Thursday exit. We've had 2 days of the stock market correcting. Well, I don't know if it's full on correcting, but we had a 3 to 4 point loss on Friday and a 2 point loss today.
Give or take, yeah.
Give or take. So probably 5-6 points down total.
So a lot of Europeans loved UK to incorporate because it had basically the equivalent of almost Delaware law. I mean, Commonwealth law. So the first sort of corporate law came out of the Netherlands, modern corporate law, jumped the pond, so to speak, over to England, became Commonwealth law, which you see in Australia, South Africa, and other Commonwealth countries. And that jumped the pond here. And then American laws, so there are basically three big legal systems that you see in the world for Western startups. UK, US and Delaware, and now Singapore as well, which also emerged out of the Commonwealth too.
Yeah.
Netherlands is a little popular, but not so much. Now, so everyone would go to the UK to incorporate in Europe at a certain level.
Yeah. Now where are they going to go? Berlin?
I don't, you know, I said Berlin, but the German legal system's a little cumbersome. A lot of people say, oh, I think Ireland's going to take it, but it's a big question mark, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a boom for Berlin and Dublin. Like they're definitely going to have some effect. But there does seem to be a chance that they may reverse this because it takes 2 years for them to fully exit. People don't seem to want to be, it seems like there's a large number of people who maybe voted to exit, who didn't expect their vote to count towards an exit and were horrified that their vote of dissent became a vote that resulted in action. That's what seems to be occurring now, and there might be a let's rethink this kind of vote and a referendum.
Yeah, well, look, the EU was in deep trouble long before London and England decided to jump ship, so to speak. I mean, the Greek. So I spend a lot of time in Europe. We have almost 30 chapters in Europe, including in England, and the Greeks. Basically, what happened was the Greeks got into trouble. Europeans came in and said, "We'll save you because we have this common currency, but you have to don't keep throwing money around like it doesn't matter." And they're like, "No," and it broke the social contract of Europe. The second,
they also, in fairness to the Greeks, we wanted to retire early, 10 years earlier than everybody else, and they wanted us to not retire and work hard. And I think the austerity measures are ridiculous.
Well, I'm not
smiling and laughing and being facetious, but it does. There is a lot of history of Germans telling, other countries in Europe what to do that triggers a lot of people, and I think there is, as much as this EU was supposed to heal a lot of those wounds and give a path forward. When Germany's asking the Greeks to change their retirement age or change their pensions and stuff like that, it does rub.
It feels imperialistic.
Well, I mean, there's a history of imperialism, right? So it does feel like, we're being conquered again.
But there's a social contract that underlines Europe. You do this, I do that. Right. You help me, I help you. Yeah. I mean, Greeks kind of broke it. I'm not saying the Germans aren't. I'm not trying to. But the Greek incident broke the social contract both ways. Yeah. And so London leaving is, it's crazy, but Europe's unraveling before our eyes.
Yeah. The good news is, to a certain extent, this is a small region. And it's not a high growth region. You're talking about under a billion people.
Greece?
No, Europe. I mean, it's under 1 billion people, and they're growing a fifth as fast as other regions in the world. So it's already been a decreasingly important market on a global basis. I mean, Asia, America, and
Jakarta, by comparison, you asked for places that surprise me. Yeah. So go to Indonesia, go to Jakarta. I mean, let's look at that as a comparable to Europe. I mean, it's a group of islands, so it's literally not even geographically linked. It's loosely linked by essentially treaty, if you will, or agreement to work together, and it's going to destroy Europe in 10, 15 years' time. I mean, it's already growth rate high single digits, not manufactured by some central government, and
why has Stockholm, Sweden, and some of those Scandinavian cities and countries outperformed the rest of Europe? We see 9 or so unicorns there. Yeah. Tyler Crowley's there doing his big, Stockholm Tech Fest there, which I spent some time at last year. Was wildly impressed. But you have this,
they just had
Spotify,
that huge finished exit.
King,
that game company Supercell sold for more than Nokia.
Yeah, well, yeah, and so what do you think's going on there on a global basis? Why do those countries outperform the rest of Europe?
So that's a good question, but I think that it's not isolated. So it's not isolated to those countries. It's pretty much any country. So it's got the obvious stuff, right? Rule of law, well-educated population, and on top of that, somewhat of a thriving and operational funding ecosystem. Yeah. So those 3 things are almost like if you don't have those 3 things, you're not going to get a unicorn, period. Rule of law. You might get like a unicorn that Putin is like, you are now a unicorn. It's like, but outside of that, you need those 3 things. On top of those 3 things in those countries, you don't have your traditional sort of mainland Europe mentality of you have a much better work ethic as well. Not always, because they're somewhat socialist too.
Now they work hard there, I think, and they've got their own challenges around housing and equity and giving people stock options. Some of these things.
Sunlight.
Well, that's actually probably a good thing. People are, there's no sunlight. You're not going out hiking. You're going to go out and work.
Yeah, well,
You're
a
gonna go to
lot
the
of
office.
people like in those regions, because I operated a company in Denmark, it gets about 4 p.m. It's pitch black in the middle of
it's
winter.
weird.
And you want to go home. It's kind of weird being at work when it's pitch black. It gets pitch black at 4.
All right, listen, this has been amazing. Continued success with the program, Adeo. I know you got to bounce soon. If you want to apply, you just go to fi.co.
That's it.
fi.co. And I highly recommend the program. I've met a bunch of founders from it. I speak at it every year here. I'm always flattered to get invites from around the world. I guess when people see you have a very good database program there where everybody can sort of see the results and
Who the top mentors are. Yeah, you're a top-rated mentor worldwide.
Well, and what happens is I think everybody sees that around the other cities, and I'm constantly getting hit up from, other.
If you're ever in a city and you wanted to have a fun night out, come by because you'll be always welcome. Yeah,
the problem is it's just there's too many cities. They're always asking, and I'm always like, I do Adeos, and that's it here. But what a great program. I highly recommend it to people especially if you're in that sweet spot where you're trying to figure out if you want to be an entrepreneur. I think it's a lightweight way to learn a lot in a short period of time and dip your toe before, like, let's say you put your life savings on the line, or you do decide to leave the company and take some huge risk. You can just do it every Thursday night or Tuesday night, whatever night you do it here. And highly, highly recommend the program. It does really well. And the best way to tell if a program's good, I always tell people, is to just talk to the graduates. So all the graduates are there on the website, fi.co/companies, fi.co/companies. Follow at Founding on the Twitter, and you can follow at Adeo Ressi. If you have any feedback on the show, you can email Jackie at launch.co or Jason at launch.co, or both of us. If you have a guest who you want to have on the program, do amazing things in the world, but we don't take pitches. Everybody wants to pitch to be on the show, and they say, how do you get on the show? And I say, be successful, make interesting products. And they say, okay, I have. And I said, we'll let you know if you have. I always tell them, if you've made something interesting, we'll be in touch.
You'll know.
You'll know. And that's the way to get on the program. Hey, listen, we're doing the Launch Angel Summit on July 12th, 13th, and 14th. Are you coming to that? You're going to come up to Napa?
I'm planning to.
Okay, yeah. So but you haven't RSVP'd, and there's a 30-person wait list. So I know that we're personal friends, but you can't just show up at everything Adeo and just be like, I'm Jason's personal friend. I've known him for 20 years. Blah. It's like, you got to actually go through the process, RSVP and sign up and do all the stuff. But anyway, that event was originally supposed to be 25 angels. Now we increased it. We got a couple of extra tables at the restaurant. It's going to be 35 angels. Each one gets to bring one founder. So there'll be 35 founders coming on the second day. So one day, just angels. We're going to go clay pigeon shooting, which will be fun. I always love doing that. We're going to play poker. We're going to have a wine tasting. Probably going to have a cooking class. And then we're going to play pétanque. We have a pétanque tournament like we did last year, a bocce ball, which is French bocce ball. And so we have a winery. We're going to play pétanque, entrepreneurs versus investors. And we'll have 7 new incubator companies launching on the 14th. All the founders come for the 14th. And if you'd like to go, you can't, because it's sold out. So I don't know why I'm reading a whole thing for it, but you can go to the website, Launch Angel Summit, and apply. And then in this fall, we'll have the Scale Conference again, which will be 1,000 founders of venture-backed or angel-backed companies, and Launch Scale. You can do a Google search for that. And then in the spring next year, Launch Festival. All those different things occurring. And you can follow at Launch if you want to follow information about all these different events.
The Launch Festival is still, I think, the best single conference in the world today, and I go to a ton of them.
Thank you for saying that.
Literally, world over, best
thanks.
one.
Well, you know what? I tell you, when I had the previous partner, speaking of bad partnerships, I was never able to really construct the vision as I wanted it, which is I wanted something that was joyful and fun and supportive, and it was. It had that joyful fun, but it also had this like bitter, cynical aspect to it, because my partner was very bitter and cynical and didn't treat people well. And so once I got that dead weight, cut loose, and it was just me, the joy started to come out, and you really had this like really thrilling event.
It's 10x bigger too.
Well, yeah, of course, because I'll tell you something. When you're bitter and you're angry at the world, you can't. It's very hard to build something that scales because people don't want to be associated with that. It gets you a short-term pop when you think about your personality test. That kind of aggression and stuff like that, it can get you short-term attention. It doesn't build a long-term legacy of joy and helpfulness and service to founders, which I think, is one of the things that we share in common is we both are doing this because we really get a joy and great fulfillment out of supporting people. And it's a humbling thing, I think, to be in a position of authority over people who are trying to change the world. I always tell people, like, when you're an angel investor or a venture capitalist, you have to take the work seriously because you're in this very rarefied position to actually pass judgment, and decide who gets a check or who gets accepted into Founders Institute or on the stage at Launch Festival. You really need to take that work seriously because
it's God's work.
Yeah, you're helping people who want to change the world in some positive way and move humanity forward. Take it seriously. It's like getting to choose who goes to a certain college or, who gets a part in a play. You want to really work hard at not doing it for favoritism or making it really like equitable and fair and supportive. And, I'm very lucky to have a team around me who agrees with that. And we work very hard, just like you do, to make it fair, to make it a level playing field.
Well, I got to tell you, to watch Launch go, and for anyone who hasn't been, you really are missing probably, and you never know how long it's going to last or whatever, but it's literally the best.
15,000 people this year, and one of the great things that's happened over the years is the corporate support has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're lucky to have IBM and Wilson Sonsini and Sequoia and Microsoft and Samsung and Google, just all these great partners year after year who support us. And what's happened is now we were able this year to give 250 exhibition tables, what we call the demo pit, for free to 250 founders.
Wow.
And that cost us probably $1,500 per table.
At least.
Because you have to rent the table, do the Wi-Fi, rent the building. It's probably $2,000. So it's probably $500,000 for those 250 tables when you think about the building for 4 days, setting it up, all that stuff. So
you're not even factoring all the planning time.
No, I'm just talking about hard costs. So you're talking about $500,000 in costs. You have to then get 10 sponsors to put up $50K to do something like that. But what's amazing about that is you have 5 people from each company get a table for 3 days, meet investors, and boy, the NPS score and people's satisfaction was incredible.
We picked a demo table guy to get investment. I don't think they won, but they got investment anyway. They got so it worked great.
All right, listen, it's great to have you back on the program, buddy, and everybody follow Adeo Ressi, a tireless supporter of entrepreneurs and an advocate for the evolution of the human species, if there ever was one. We'll see you next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.